All right, so we should be live right now, but before we kind of get things underway, can you maybe give like a brief introduction about yourself for people that may not know who you are?
Sure. No. Well, first off, Isaac, I appreciate you having me here. My name's Dylan Bunnell. I'm the head boys basketball coach, recently named at Albertville High School. We're located in Marshall County in Northeast Alabama. We're a 7A school. We compete at the highest level classification that the state of Alabama offers. Coming in first year, have made a couple of different stops, head coaching stops all throughout North Alabama. Spent a little time in junior college, and then also have been involved in the grassroots level of basketball with Pro One for the past 6-7 years. So, I'm just a guy at the end of the day. If you're asking me to explain myself, that just tries to live in a gym, loves building relationships with kids and coaches and anyone who loves the game of basketball, and just really likes to work hard, have fun, and make connections like this and talk the game and growing it and, making another connection here. So excited to chop it up with you today.
Yeah, I'm really grateful to be able to talk to people like you and everything, because of course, I'm still kind of young, got some time to figure out what I want to do, and definitely being a coach is something I'm heavily considering. So very glad we're going to be able to chop it up right now. But I guess the first question, like I'm sure you even said you had a podcast, so I'm sure you kind of asked this question too, like one of the most basic questions. But again, everyone's story is different. So just what got you started on this journey?
Yeah, no, that's obviously the best place to start is the start. And that's, sports have been something that have been a part of my life as far as as long as I can remember. Ball was in my hand, football, basketball, baseball. I always gravitated to basketball. I grew up in a very small rural Northwest Alabama town. I graduated high school with like 60 people, very small school. Got a chance. I was a decent athlete coming up and kind of played them all. Really, in far as like one thing, I always wanted to be a teacher before I wanted to be a coach. I really gravitated. I started my college career and stuff going after my special education degree. I wanted to teach children with special needs and be involved in that role, and had the chance to early in my career. Since have phased out of that a little bit. So, a little bit of a different path. Some people probably like you were like, man, I want to coach. I've been around it. I love the game. I love sports. I played them. But I wanted to be a teacher. Well, then my senior year of high school at Lexington High School, a guy by the name of Derek Johnston, who now is one of the head assistants at Liberty University, came in and was hired as the head coach at our high school. He had graduated from Lexington as well. And that really changed the whole trajectory of my life in terms of what I wanted, what I enjoyed. I gained a new appreciation for the game of basketball and just like the mental warfare behind it. And I always told people there's 3 distinct people at different times in my life I crossed paths with in the game of basketball, and Derek was the first one that really sent me heading to where I am now. So just playing for him, and then he hired me the next year. That was my first job. I was a young guy right out of high school. Had decided I wanted to coach, and he let me do JV and varsity assistant and kind of learn the other side of it. Right. I thought I knew a lot as a player, especially playing for him. He was so bright, but then, day one in the office was like, man, I don't know anything about this. So, that was the early part of me, was just growing up a kid with a ball in my hand, loving being in the driveway, doing all that. And then as I got older, knowing that I wanted to teach and be in schools, was like, well, coaching is a great avenue to get into that or to use with that, so to say. So, that as far as the basketball side, Coach Johnston changed the trajectory for me.
And you brought up, like, it kind of caught me by surprise, because like my mom, she's actually a substitute teacher. Mm-hmm. And like, and I'm sure most parents tell their kids is they're like, never, like, do not be a teacher, like, not because it's a bad job, but it's because just like it's definitely more of, I guess, giving job. Like, you got to have like a really good personality if you want to be a teacher, because you're given a lot and you're not getting as much back. So I guess kind of off the core question, but like, why did you want to be a teacher, and especially for a special needs class as well?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's something, what you said, I heard a lot as I was growing up, and I was very open about, hey, this is something I wanted to do. And everyone, whether it was as I was substituting or going through college, that would say, hey, you must be really patient, really, great heart, whatever. They would say these things, and it didn't necessarily really resonate with me. I was just like, oh, you're just saying that. When I got into the job and had my first classroom and started really working, I understood more what they meant. But for me, like, it was a few things. One, and I'll always be thankful, my dad gave me the advice when I was very young. He grew up working his tail off and works in a chemical plant now and has kind of climbed the ladder in there, but had to work really hard to get there. And he told me at a very young age, he's like, man, find something where you work with your mind and not your back. And, you'll be happier for it in the long run. So, that was the first part of it. And then the other, I just love people, man. I love being around people. I love connecting. I love helping people. I know it sounds really cliche, but like that's where I get my joy from. I mean, I really, when I'm by myself is usually when I'm at my lowest. When I'm in crowds or with someone is when I'm at my highest. So I was like, man, on top of that, getting to invest into the next generation or youth or kids and use my experiences to give back and just educate. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy seeing connections be made. I enjoy seeing progress be made. So it can't, teaching kind of checked all those boxes for me.
Yeah. And it's funny because, I would say like people say, don't be a teacher, but also like just as much people say, don't be a teacher. People say, don't try pursuing to be a basketball coach or someone in sports. Like that's such a tough industry as well. So it's like, how are you really able to deal with kind of all that doubt? Because the two things you want to do in life are both two things where people say like, trust me, like do not do those.
Well, no, I mean, I think the most clear thing I can say on that in my adult life, I've probably lived below the poverty line more than I've lived above it. So that's something but it's just, man, I found something I was passionate about and have just kind of rolled with it. And I think a few things, if you work really hard, and again, I'll probably sound like I'm giving you coach speak here, but I mean, it's really what I believe. Like, find something, commit to it, and work your tail off at it. Well, that's kind of what I did when I decided, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I went both feet in and started going to every camp I could and working camp. I started, going to every high school coach I could and just asking questions and trying to pick their brain and make connections. I started substitute teaching when I was 18 years old. Like, man, I was subbing in classes the fall after I graduated high school, where I would walk into a class and be subbing for a class against guys I'd like played sports against, that were like 1 year younger than me. And I'm like, oh, I'm a substitute teacher. So, I chased every opportunity I could. I was given a piece of advice. Like, no, someone told me one time, never miss a blank opportunity. And like, whatever your blank is what it should be. So for me, it was basketball. I tried to never miss a basketball opportunity. If there was a camp, if there was a clinic, if there was an open run going on, I was trying to be there just to like learn something new, to make a new connection. As far as people say, the doubt and all this, and you shouldn't be doing it. Like, I never really heard it because I knew I was doing what I wanted to do. I was very comfortable with every decision I made because it was like I felt like I was where I was supposed to be doing what I was supposed to be doing. And so I never really heard much of that. Like I'm sure it existed, but it just never really like resonated with me. So that's, just kind of put my head down, work and tried to have a little fun with it along the way. And then I believe that also gratitude reciprocates. So just being extremely thankful for all the opportunities I got, whether that was, being a JUCO assistant, making pennies on the dollar, whether that was, chasing around AAU basketball teams all spring, probably losing money, traveling and stuff, but like being grateful for the opportunity. And I think that's something that probably gets lost a little bit, is how much gratitude reciprocates. So I tried to use that as well.
Definitely. You just said how, you were a JUCO assistant coach, and I know, like, I guess you said you lived in Northwest Alabama or something like that, and then you got hired, I guess, at your school or whatever. Like, you definitely it's not your only coaching job where you are right now. I guess more, there's a quick, like, how many coaching jobs have you had?
No, that's a great question. So I'm 28 now, and I'll probably have to count these as I go. I've been fortunate enough to be the head varsity coach. This is my third school. I was at Randolph School, which is in Huntsville, a private college prep school there for 2 years as the head coach. I was a head coach this past year at St. John Paul II Catholic High School, JP2, which is in Huntsville as well. Served a couple other roles. I was at Hartselle High School, which is also in North Alabama, for a few years as a JV assistant, and then or a JV head coach and varsity assistant when I was young. And then obviously my first job at Lexington. So, it's something that as I've taken this job, I think to get out in front of things, and people go, oh, well, you bounced around a little bit. And like, yeah, there's certainly truth to that. I can't hide from that. But, every move that I've made has tried to be very educated, very intentional. And I believe that all of them kind of happen for a reason, because they led me here to Albertville, in a place that I feel like has some staying power, and a place that I'm excited to plant roots, and get into the community and be somewhere to stay for a little while. So, I've made several stops along the way, including the stop at Roane State, JUCO in East Tennessee, and now here I am in Albertville, Alabama.
Yeah. So, I mean, about like the bouncing around and everything, like because that is something that a lot of coaches have to go through. Like, no one just gets hired, like I doubt Coach K got hired at Duke, just stayed there and, became and that was his whole life. Like, every coach is somewhere, then goes to this state, or maybe then this school, or then, and I heard coaches get fired like all the time. Like, that is a job where you're probably guaranteed to be moving at least one time or another in your career. So just like, what is that experience like, moving around and going to different schools and everything?
Well, I'll be honest, when I was younger and thinking about, kind of climbing the ladder, so to say, or whatever, I kind of thought the idea of moving around sounded awesome. Man, get to live in different places, experience different cultures, meet new people, whatever. But it is, and that's what I tell people that have recently approached or have at times, but man, you've bounced around a lot or whatever. Like, it's exhausting to move around. I mean, to build the relationships that you do wherever you are for whatever length of time you are with whatever people are there, and then have to just start the process over again. I mean, it's not an ideal situation. It's not something that I find fun because of, it's tedious, it's work. And I want to get in and really get to know people. And when you're only work places short periods of time, or, whatever it may be, or you're getting to a new place, you just kind of get the surface stuff. And like, I want to get beneath the surface and get to really know people in our communities. And so, it's something that I'm excited about doing here, but it's taxing. I think at one point there was and some of these were inner city moves, like where I was at the same job, but actually moved at some point within 5 years. I'd moved like 8 times or something, and I got to the point now, as I'm getting ready to move my stuff to Albertville, I'm tired of doing it. That's the one thing I've learned from it all, is like, I'm hiring somebody to move my crap this time. So, that may be the biggest thing I'm taking away from it, is I'm tired of carrying a bed frame and mattress and couch upstairs, apartments, all that. Like, time for somebody else to do it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's definitely. I remember. I mean, I've only moved around. I think I've moved actually 3 times my whole life. But like, every time I moved, like, I was maybe like 1 year old, then I was like 3 or like 5. So obviously, not really much I could contribute. So I don't really understand that experience. But sure, it's definitely a little painful for sure. But also being associated with Pro 1,
sure,
because involved with UAA and everything like that. Like, that's a very, very other high-level program. How did you get the opportunity to work and be a part of that team?
Yeah, so that, is something that probably, as we talked about earlier, you were asking about, what trajectory and what helped me get places. Well, crossing paths with a guy named Danny Servick, almost probably 10 years ago, a little shy of that, was the next thing for me that really moved the needle in terms of that. Danny, at the inception of Pro 1, Danny was finishing his career as an agent. His kids were getting older, and he was, looking for a way to stay home more and watch his kids grow up. And so Sam, who is now on our 17U Rise roster, is getting ready to be a senior. And he was a 4th grader, maybe 5th, I forget, but I'm pretty sure it was 4th grade. And there were several of those guys that Danny started just playing travel ball with, as, just a couple of them getting together. They would wear a Pro 1 jersey. But then I think after a year or two, he had more of a vision to do it at the high school level. And that's about the time that his and my path crossed. A guy by the name of Farron Key, who was my boss at Hartselle High School, introduced me to Danny at a University of Alabama Huntsville, which is a Division II here in North Alabama. We were watching them practice, and introduced me to Danny. And, it was a time I was young and was ready to kind of do something a little different. And we started talking, and at the spring of our inception, I guess 5 or 6 years ago, I had a freshman team, took those guys, did some YBOA stuff, just kind of played some small tournaments as we were figuring it out. And I've been fortunate enough to be along for the ride ever since, with the one exception being the time I was at Roane State, obviously disassociated with the club. But Danny's one of my dearest friends. I consider him a brother and even a father. It's a weird relationship. He's like a brother and a father at once, and a friend all in things. So he's been an incredible resource for me. He's given me opportunities to do things that like I couldn't dream of, coach players that at the highest level, be on the Under Armour deal and traveling. And, we just finished a weekend playing in the Pacers Center and the Athletic Center. And that's, I was sending a picture. He had taken a picture. We were on the main court, and I sent it to my dad, and I said, man, it was one of these, like, I'm this small town guy from Lexington, Alabama that looked up and I'm coaching at the Pacers Athletic Center. Mm-hmm. Like there's so many things like that in relationships I've been able to build because of Danny and because of Pro One and just getting in at the right time. And, all of us kind of clicked and have worked really hard to build it up since then. So what it is now is certainly not what it's always been, but we're awfully dang proud of what we've got going.
Yeah. And that's basically how it is with everything and anything. So not really kind of surprised by that story, but kind of just the coaching aspect of coaching, like a high level AAU program where there's like, there's tons of guys with Division I offers, and then you're coaching not, like a bad high school team, but just, just like a high school team. Cause
sure,
like besides like those, top 25 big prep schools, like no high school can really like relate to being, on the UAA circuit or something like that. So what's like just coaching, two completely different, I guess, styles of basketball and cultures?
No, it's, one thing that with Pro One that is so unique, and it honestly makes it easier than you would think is we do a very deep dive as we're rostering teams of making sure that we get good people from good families, that most of them play for good high school programs, if not all of them. And so in a way, man, like it's very similar because we try to attract people that want to play the right way, that don't want to play AAU basketball. They want to play basketball. I think that's something, you hear all the time. Well, in AAU, you can do this. Well, it's basketball nonetheless. And so, I think there is an element of dealing with some of the hardest things for me with the AAU side are the time that we don't get to spend together. Like with my high school teams, obviously you see them every day, sometimes multiple times a day. We practice year round, all that stuff. Well, with Pro One, like, man, we try to practice as much as we can, but we're so spread out. It's not one where we get together every weekend. Like it's been a long time since we practiced, and you just kind of show up and make it work. You got to be a little more flexible. You got to be a little more ready to adjust things on the fly. But at the same time too, like you said, you're dealing with a pretty high clientele of player, whether that's Division I players, Division II, whatever. We're fortunate at Albertville. We have some very talented players. Riley Norris is one of the more notable alumni. Played at University of Alabama. He was here. And so like Albertville, where I am now, is conditioned to having that. But for having a team full of them is certainly a unique challenge. There's some things that come into managing egos and managing, at the end of the day, I got guys sitting on the bench that are probably the best player on their high school team. Some of them even the best player in their league. And now they're sitting there, spelling a guy or, coming off the bench. And it's like, man, trying to get people to buy into that's really difficult. But I think at the end of the day, it's kudos to their families and the way that Danny has constructed this entire machine to make sure that we get the right people that understand what we're doing. So it is difficult at times, but it's probably not as hard for us as some would imagine.
Yeah. So I guess you could say maybe one of the more reasons why it could be a little bit easier is because just with even, giving guys offers to go to college or in the NBA, it's like, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, they gotta be good basketball players, but all the scouts can see, they're paid to see how they are on the court. So the most important stuff is how they are off the court. So I guess that's kind of where you guys really hone in on your scouting and who you guys want on the team is, you got to make sure that they are good people and not just taking the best players.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think a tremendous story to kind of display that. It was just 2 or 3 years ago. We were building our 17U. It was going to be our first year with Under Armour, and we're getting ready to go play on the Rise circuit. And we're building this roster. And we had a few guys coming back, but for the most part, the 17U team was going to be completely new. And Mountain Brook High School, which is in Birmingham, Alabama, a big-time program. Bucky McMillan was there at the time, who's now at Samford, had a kid by the name of Holt Bashinsky, who was coming up to be a senior. Mountain Brook being so tremendous, he had played some spell minutes, but going into this year, he was going to get a chance to play a little more. And we were very intrigued by him, had connected with he and his family and enjoyed, but wanted to see him. Well, me going to evaluate, and it's reason we do what we do very intentionally without giving away too much of the secret sauce. Like we watch warm-ups and things like that just as much as we watch what happens in the game. Like, how do you conduct yourself? Are you the guy that's wearing maybe your headphones, doing something a little different? Or are you the guy that's committed to your team? Are you the guy that, if there's trash, I know one thing, every time it goes viral or, a kid picking up trash on the bench. And I love the fact that gets notoriety, but we want guys that do that all the time. Like we want the unordinary to kind of be ordinary. Like, oh yeah, nobody does that. Well, we just want guys that do it all the time, that do, that are really good at simple things, that don't try to make it more than it is. And so we do, like, as you said, try to evaluate some of the off the court stuff as much, whether it's talking to their high school coaches. Hey, how do they act in school? Can they travel? Can they communicate? Can they get places? Like, because to your point, like, these colleges that are going to evaluate these kids look at the same things. It's more than what you do on the court or in that mixtape. It's how you act. Are you coachable? One thing I try to challenge our guys during Pro 1 games to really coach them so college coaches can see them being coached. And because you need to know if a guy's coachable. Like, Will Shaver, I know you've had on your shows, a tremendous player and is going to play at the highest level, but like, he loves being coached. He loves hearing things that he can do better. Now, does he like to have a voice and he has an opinion because he has a very high basketball IQ? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, like, he knows that I'm trying to feed him information that's going to make him better. So he's just soaking it up, man. It's always eye contact. And all of our kids are like that. I mean, you never look in a Pro 1 huddle where kids aren't making eye contact, where they ain't locked in, they're not pulling for each other. So, and I keep circling back. That's all kudos to their families and really Danny Cervic for making sure that we put the right model together of what we wanted.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, obviously I've had thoughts like what I want my basketball culture to be like, and I am that. Everything you said, I definitely like agree with Lily. Like, that's how I would want my culture to be. Like, it's crazy to think about how people like don't think about that. Like, I also understand how there could be coaches out there that don't really consider that stuff.
Well, I'll tell you that, not to cut you off, but like the thing that we stole with that and have kind of made, it's probably the most popular thing I tweet is everybody's got their hashtags now and their slogans or whatever. Well, we try not to be sloganarians, like we're not running around. But one thing that's always stuck with our club, and it stuck because other people said it about us, was that we wanted to be different. And in the world, especially in AAU basketball, everything kind of looks the same. You go, no matter what team, they run some ISO stuff. Maybe the culture is not great. Maybe, the times that you hear languid profanity and things coming from the bench, it's just a little like, yeah, like, I don't know if I want to be a part of that. So our thing was, let's be different and let's attract people who want to be different. And now the flip side of that, not everyone wants that. Like, there's people who enjoy the other, and that's completely fine. Not saying that our way is the right way, but it's the right way for us. So that's interesting. And it's a hard thing. It takes a lot of honest conversations. It takes a lot of guys who are willing to do it right all the time, because your culture is not what you say, it's what you allow. And so, that's what, as a high school coach here at Albertville or with Pro 1, we try to be really mindful of, like, that stuff matters, if not just as much, if not more than, what sets are we running, or, things like that.
Yeah. And actually going back, luckily when you did kind of like cut me off, I actually like forgot what I was going to say, but now I actually got my train of thought back anyways. But I remember, like, I saw something going back to the whole like culture thing, like how you want guys to be. I actually saw like a tweet where it was like, there was like a college coach watching like a live stream, and I guess like he was told like his only task was like to watch like how the guy walked off, like after every time he was subbed out, or see like how many times he put like his head down or something like that. And that's what they did. But I'm curious, like, being different. I mean, I do feel like that's like, not like overdone, but now a lot of guys like, oh, I'm different. Like, oh, yo, like, you're so different, like whatever. But then it's like, you did say it too. Like, that's probably one of the biggest challenges is it's like, being different means like, there's not many people that are like that out there. So and especially, being in Alabama where that's not like the best known basketball state, like, is it like really difficult to find enough guys that could really buy into that culture and that are like that? Because that is a trait where, there's maybe one kid per high school team that's like that. Usually some teams have like no guys that are really like that. So
no, you're absolutely right. And it is hard to find. And it's why we're very selective in guys we take, in guys that we roster. It is very intentionally done. All those things have been evaluated. And, and then even that, we still have to teach lessons after the fact. And I have to learn lessons after the fact in that. And, I learn something new every day about what it really means to be different. Like you said, you hear the kids now, oh, he's built different. He is different, whatever, like, because they do something on the court. Like, the be different for us is like everything off the court. And then we hope that it translates onto the court, which it usually does. And so, yeah, it is certainly something that is hard to find, but when you find it, it's really special. And you can, it's one of those things you just know when you see it, you're like, yeah, that guy gets it, or this team gets it, or, and we are lucky in Alabama for as much of a rep as we get as being a football state, and basketball is not as big here, and it is what it is. We have some tremendous high school coaches in this state. I mean, some really, really good ones. And on top of that, we have some tremendous college coaches who are helping make the game better for us. And, whether that's Nate Oates at Alabama being a high school coach, whether that's Bruce Pearl, who all he's brought to Auburn, or whether that's even going all the way down to Tony Pujol at University of North Alabama. Like, these guys are trying to give back. They're trying to grow the game. And we've got a network of high school coaches that I think are very underrated. It's just they're very spread out, a little more few and far between than probably some bigger states. But we're trying to get there, man. We're trying to fly the flag high and get hoops to matter here in Alabama.
Yeah, and I mean, there are a lot of guys, even people outside of your team. Like, I spoke to like Cade Phillips. I know he's a pretty solid kid. Then I mean, JD Davidson. You can't not. I just want to have you had the chance to see him play before?
Yeah, no, I saw both of those guys, and they're both tremendous players, man. Yeah. Cade obviously coming up. I can't wait to see what he does, and then JD, like, man, that guy is unreal. I mean, every time I see him live, it's like it reinvents what I think about him. I mean, I can't wait to see him in Tuscaloosa and playing in that pace. Selfishly, I kind of roll with the tide sometimes, so I'll be excited to see him taking on what Oates is doing down there. But I mean, like that case in point, like we do is, even though it's not necessarily as loaded at the top and super top heavy, man, there's some tremendous players that come out of our state, and JD's one of those that are leading the charge in that right now. Cade's one of them, and we could go on for days. But yes, I've seen them both multiple times, and have always been impressed with them. And I think both of those guys are ones that do it the right way too. I mean, they seem like great kids, and props to their families and the way they've been raised. So that's certainly something we're proud of both of them. Yeah,
and a question more about you personally, like. You did say you did say you're 28 years old, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So obviously, you're not hiding your age. It's not really an old man kind of thing. You're pretty. I don't know if you consider yourself old, but like I guess you're probably a pretty young guy amongst most of the people you're around. And I feel like that's like a trend in like high school basketball that is slowly like starting to really get into college basketball. Like we see Juwan Howard, even though he's kind of old, like he's still like I mean, one of his kids is my age. Like then. One of his kids, like, he definitely could relate to the youth a lot. Like we're seeing, the coaches that are now the best, the ones the players want to play for, unless maybe you're like Coach K or something like that. Like are all those young, like really youthful coaches that are just basically like the same age as the kids that they're recruiting and everything. So how would you say like being young in the age you are, how has that really helped you, recently?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one thing, it helps to have a high level of energy. I feel like that I could just go all day if I need to, and which I do most days. We here at Albertville, we had, varsity JV practice this morning, freshman practice, our middle school's practicing now, and I try to be on the court for all of them and getting to know our guys and work with them. So, I think the energy thing certainly helps. And I think that's something that, kids are getting really smart. I think, you hear all the time, people talk, everybody wants to talk about the generation after them's dropping off, right? Oh, kids aren't as tough as they used to be. They aren't whatever. I think it's more kids are smarter than they've ever been, man. I mean, look at all the information they have. And so for that, I think they can see through stuff. I think there's a lot of coaches out there who, and I, I'm the first to call people out just as I'm okay with being called out. But like, I think a lot of coaches have gotten by with like just doing things the same old way because that's how they've always been done. And these kids now are smart, man, and they have access to stuff. And like, if you don't know what you're talking about, they'll call you out on it. And so, like, I don't know if my age as much helps me to relate with them as much as it is. I make sure that I know what we're talking about to present to our players. Now, are there things that culturally maybe I'm a little more in tune with that helps me communicate and things? Sure. Like, I think, to deny that is crazy. But at the end of the day, like, I very few times think about my age, like, oh, I'm 28 and doing this, or I was, 22 doing that, or whatever, or hey, I'm going to be 40. Like, that's the part that scares me more is how am I going to keep doing this when I'm 40? Like, man, I know what I put into it every day. Like, can I keep that going? And I love what I do. I don't have any question that I want, but that's more the challenge for me as I think about it. Not so much what I do while I'm young. I feel confident in what I do here, and I got a great network of people around me and mentors. And that's probably the other side of it, man, is like, for all the success I've had, or whatever you want to call it, of getting the opportunity to do some of the things I've done, most of it's because I have a network of people behind me that I'm never afraid to ask for help. I'm never afraid to be like, hey, I don't know what's going on here. What should I do? And whether those are college coaches or high school coaches, or, just people that I really trust. And I think that's something everyone should do, regardless of what your field or whatever is like. Create yourself a little like council, if you will, 4 or 5 people. When you have decisions and crossroads, you can run it by them, and it better be people you trust. I mean, it better be people that are going to tell you if you're in the wrong, you're in the wrong. Danny Cervic is one of those guys for me. When I'm in the wrong, he tells me very quickly, and I'm cool with it because I know he knows what he's talking about. I know he has my best interest in mind, and I listen, So, and I have several more of them, but like, I think that's something that I don't think as much about my age. It probably does help in ways that I don't think about. But at the end of the day, like, I just try to make sure I know what I'm talking about, work really hard for our guys, let them know we love them and we know them and we care about them, and then just rock and roll with it.
And that's kind of like almost one of the main reasons why I may not want to be a coach, is because like, I feel like it's very, like you said, the youth is smarter. Like I think there's a lot of kids where, they could easily coach the team as their high schoolers. There's definitely those kids out there that, just have an extremely high IQ, and like, it definitely is. Like, obviously it's not basketball practice. It's not like a class, but it definitely has an atmosphere sometimes when my coach is like breaking down a play and this guy's like, oh, it's like this part, like and then, throwing all these vocabulary terms and like all this stuff. Like it definitely feels like as if you're in a classroom, but you're practicing. Like the kids for sure are definitely getting smarter. So it's like, that is one of my biggest fears as a coach. It's like, did all this networking, did everything I was supposed to do that I was told to do. But it's like I show up, I finally get the opportunity because I did everything else I was told to do, because no one really touches on learning the game. Like, they ought to say network and do all this off-court stuff, which I feel like is extremely easy. Like, that's what I like to do the most. So it's like, I'm concerned, I'm going to get the opportunity and be clueless. So it's like, how are you really able to build up your IQ and, be knowledgeable on things?
Yeah, I mean, it's with that, man, we have a saying, and I steal this from Lenny Acuff, who's the head coach at Lipscomb now, and kind of a dear friend of mine, is the secret is there really is no secret. And so, learning it is as simple as just learning it, just like anything else. You want to learn to play the guitar, what do you got to do? You got to pick up the guitar and start strumming. And so to learn to really teach the game and know the game, I just found opportunities to start teaching it and learning it. And honestly, I've probably learned more by messing things up than I have by doing them right. Running a set and it not working, or calling something at a bad time, or running a drill in practice and 30 seconds into it being like, man, this is a bad drill. Like, we never need to do this again, or just stopping it at all that point together. So, I mean, but I think you're certainly right. I think in coaching, especially, and the old saying, like, it's not what you know, it's who you know, like, that certainly exists now more than ever. But I almost think that's a shame. I think that's hurting our game, that everybody thinks it's a networking game. Everybody thinks it's, oh, you got to know this guy and got to know that guy so that guy can call for you and this. Dude, you got to know this stuff, man, and you got to be able to do it at a high level, or like we talked about earlier, kids are going to see through it, and your product's not going to be good. Your players are not going to get any better. And like, maybe there's places that are okay with that, but I want to be affiliated with places that expect excellence. So because of that, like, it's for me, it's constantly working. It's finding a game on and watching, and maybe finding something that's new, or it's picking up the phone and calling and saying, hey, what are you guys doing now? What's the new thing in your league, or whatever? And then just learning and taking notes and it, I could talk all day, but like, at the end of the day, the line for me is like, the secret on that, there is no secret. You just learn it and do it and keep doing it, and then learn it and try it again. And it's an ongoing process. And that's what I love about it. I love the fact that there is no arrival. I love the fact that, there's always something out there that you can get a little better at. It makes me happy to know that I work in a profession that I'll never figure out. I'll still be making mistakes 30 years from now. I'm sure. I hope not, but I'm sure I will be. And there's an element of that I really enjoy.
Yeah, and that definitely is a great point too, because it's like, it's also kind of cool about basketball is, I feel like it's almost like snowflakes. Like, I don't think like no two coaches are the same, because everybody has their different background of, and not even saying in terms of like their personalities, like in terms of the literal like hardcore basketball itself. Like no two like teams gonna play the exact same. I mean, they can all be similar, but there's always going to be something different about them. Like it really is endless learning in the game.
It is. No, and it's the same, as a coach, like with players,
Yeah.
inheriting this program here at Albertville. I'm taking over for a guy named Patrick Harding that was here for over 20 years and built an incredibly strong program, one of the winningest programs over 20 years in our state. And, but which is a whole nother challenge in itself, but more so like I inherited new players that have new skill sets, that have, different things they do well, different weaknesses. And it's really more for me something, everybody talks about player development now. Oh, we're PD, we're player development, whatever. Well, for me, I've now always used that term. Well, now as I've opened my mind a little more and we have new players that have new skills and different things that maybe I haven't spent as much time around, we've kind of shifted our stance on it to be player enhancement. Like, let's take what you do or what you don't do and just get better at that. And then we'll add the other stuff. And sure, there's a development level to that. But really kind of reframing it to like, hey, I'm learning as much from our guys right now. We have some players that can do some dynamic things athletically. And so I'm now having to adjust to coach to that and build our entire scheme around those type guys because it's a new thing for me. So I think that goes both ways. And then with coaches, like I inherited a couple of coaches here that are going to stay on our staff that speak a different language, that know different things, that have played for different coaches, and just you kind of take it all together and mix it all up and find what you believe in, take some stuff you like and just keep meshing it and gelling it together. And, it's an ongoing, ever-growing thing. And I'm sure it is as it is for players as well, but it certainly is fun to do.
Yeah, and being like the new head coach, that's honestly something that I don't understand anything about that because my school's coach, like, I think my school's might be 20 years old, might not be, but it's definitely around that age. And my coach has been there as soon as the school opened. He's been there, hasn't left. We're the only sport where our basketball program is the only sport where the coach has never been fired or there was never any coaching changes. So I know next year my senior year. So I think pretty sure right now, unless if he wins the lottery, he said he'll retire. But if not, like he's still going to be there. So I do not understand what it's like getting a new. I can't even imagine like what it must be like for I guess a player and for a coach, like coming into a school where these guys are so used to this guy and like I really have no idea what that feeling is like. So how do you handle that where these guys are so used to the previous coach and all of a sudden like you just show up and gotta hope the guys buy in?
Yeah, I mean I think there's a few things and I may miss a few as well, but the biggest for me are number one, like those guys have to know that I want to know them and I care about them, and they have to know me. When I introduced myself to our guys, I did not introduce myself as Coach Bunnell. I'm Dylan Bunnell. That's who I am. I'm a human being first, and I have flaws, I have shortcomings, I have faults, just as our players do, and they needed to know that. And I think that's incredibly important. And then on top of that, like they needed to know that I'm here fighting the same fight that they're fighting. Like I want Albertville basketball to be great just as each of them do. I want each of them individually to be great just as they do. And then more importantly, like I just went to work. Like I wanted them from second one, not just kind of story. Like I was board certified and hired on a Tuesday night at like 6 o'clock or so Central Time. And at about 7 o'clock a.m. the next morning, I was in the gym with our middle school team working out, and getting our hands on our youth and our younger guys and trying to like get to know them as quickly as I could. And being here in Albertville, which is a bigger community, bigger city, bigger school, getting into the community and getting boots on the ground immediately. And it's like I've told everybody, this is this city's basketball program. I'm just fortunate enough to be the leader of it. And so I think those are some things that are incredibly important and that I've worked really hard to do. And just, showing up, working and letting those guys know, A, we know them, B, we love them, and C, we're going to work their tails off to try to make them better players and better people.
So like you said, how you told the players, like, we're all fighting the same fight. Like I want you guys to get like, kind of showing like, I, want everything you guys want. Like I'm here for you guys and everything. So you said you told them that, but like how did you do that?
Yeah, just as simply as that. I think conversation sometimes can get a little tricked out, and I'm the world's worst at it, where I try to sound way smarter than I am sometimes, and use words that maybe sometimes I know the meaning of, but I think people won't catch. But for them, I literally just was like, hey guys, like our aspiration here is to win a 7A state championship, and not just one of them, and then build, as I've told them, we want to build the most unique high school basketball experience in the country, and use those words very intentionally. and we plan everything out with our program in mind and building that and developing that. And so I just shared it with them as simply as that. Like, I'm here to fight for and with you guys, and we're going to fight for our best daily. We're not looking for perfect, we're looking for best, and I'm going to give you my best. If you give me yours, this thing will be great. So I know that's not an exciting answer. It was just kind of, I told them just as you said it, pretty much.
Yeah. So you said how you kind of said you want to build like a unique experience, like, because I feel like a lot of schools are saying like, we're going to build, not unique, but like we're going to build a top tier experience here. We're going to play on the national schedule, where it's not, that's not unique. Like a lot of schools are now starting to do that. So what do you mean by like, I'm going to build a unique experience?
No, that's a great catch by you. And that word, as I tell our players, I try not to waste words. That word is very intentional. We didn't set out to say we want to build the best basketball program in Alabama. We want to build the most successful. Like, we could have used those words, but I think that unique encapsulates so many things. Obviously, we want to achieve the highest level of success on the court. Like, every year we don't win a state championship, in theory, is a letdown. Like, that's our goal. That our team's goal every year with the varsity basketball team should be to compete and play for a state championship. You want to win the last game of the year, and it's as simple as that for me. But then there's even more to that in terms of like how we interact with our community, how visible we are, the social, emotional, and spiritual development that we give guys, the resources that we give them to take care of their bodies, the resources that we give them in the weight room and on the track and in our conditioning, the level of basketball that they receive on a daily basis from the teaching. It's an all encapsulating answer that everything we do is Albertville basketball. From the time you're a second grader in Albertville, Alabama, until as long as you want to be associated, even if that's at 80 years old, there's a place for you here. And so creating this unique community-driven environment is probably the best way of saying it, where everybody's for each other and we're striving to make this incredibly different, and I steal the word different from Pro 1 experience, where even if we don't achieve our goal of winning the big game or winning the state championship, we still are going to know that we provided opportunities, we provided an experience unlike any that you could find. And you leave us a better person, you leave us a better player, you leave us a better citizen, you leave us with relationships, you leave us knowing that you're loved, that you're known, that you're cared for, and that you always will be, and that you'll always be a part of it. We talk about once an Aggie, always an Aggie, and try to live that the night that I was hired, I heard from more alumni of the program that didn't even play for me, reaching out to say, hey, congratulations, can't wait to support you. So Coach Harding had done such a nice job of laying the groundwork of that. We're just going to try to take it, enhance it, and grow it, and make it as big scale as we can to provide that. As my words are intentional. We don't want to be the greatest, the most unique program in 7A or in Alabama or in Marshall County. We use the word country very intentionally. We want to be talked about as one of those that maybe we don't play on the ESPN schedule all the time, but at the end of the day, like, the name Albertville basketball is known. When you see the A, when you see Albertville, you recognize it, and because of the way we do things. So very long-winded answer. There's a lot more to it than that, but at the end of the day, the most important being the word unique, not maybe the most successful, not maybe the most decorated or whatever, but all that does come with the word unique as we try to seek out those things.
Yeah. And I guess before I get into my next question, just like a quick one, is Albertville High School, is that a public school or a private school?
Yeah, we are public school. So and this is my first public head coaching experience. My two other head coaching jobs were both private schools. So this is a public school here. K through 12, we service around 6,000 students. So, and it's a growing place. There's a economic boom here. The housing market's crazy. You can't find anywhere to live. I've been struggling with that. Everyone's trying to move to the area or somewhere around. So, we're a public school system, and I've worked in a few as assistant roles, but this is my first head job in a public system.
Yeah. So I guess obviously you probably have things a little more figured out than how I would imagine, but like kind of comparing it to I was the president of my elementary school. So, I don't know if you know, but I guess basically the job was like a do nothing thing. Like I thought you get to do a lot. Like I would go out a couple ideas and I would try to talk to like my assistant principal, and they were to say like, oh, she'll follow up with you. Like, never like I'm a fifth grader, so not really much.
Right.
Not going to care. But it's like, I feel like going to a public school is obviously like a lot of limitations that, the different clubs and like maybe teachers that are like sponsored or like coaches kind of have, like they can't do they don't have like as much freedom as a private school would. So how are you going to kind of deal with that, where I'm sure there's some things like that you might not be allowed to do? They could be great things, but it's just like, just because of some, rules, you just can't do them. So how are you going to kind of deal with that, where now you're at a public school where there's a lot more limitations because you have like a whole, big school board kind of like above you and everything?
Sure. No, and that's a tremendous question. And this is something that attracted me to Albertville so much, is that our administration, from our superintendent, Dr. English, to our high school principal, Mr. Jordan Phillips, to everyone involved, they want to see Albertville basketball be great. They want to see Albertville be great. I mean, they want this school to achieve at the highest level across the map. So in a way, man, like, some of those challenges, they've removed those roadblocks because they want us to be great. They said, hey, here's the keys, go drive the car. Obviously, there's rules we have to adhere to. And in the state of Alabama, the AHSAA is tremendous. They really allow us to work with our students and do a lot of things to provide a good product. And if you want to put in the time. So there's probably not as many as one would think. And at least here there's not, which is why I was so attracted to the job, because this community, the board, the superintendent, just the people here want to see it be great. So they're like, man, let's do what it takes. Like if it takes X to achieve at the highest level, we're going to do X, as long as it's within the rules and limitations, and we're ethically doing things the right way, then let's go do it. So and that's very unique to here. That does not exist everywhere, which is why I found myself so drawn to being an Albertville Aggie, is because of that very reason.
Yeah, and just a couple more questions before we kind of wrap this up. Something you said a little earlier was how, like, the players are smarter, so you would see sometimes they're gonna kind of, like, obviously maybe not in a disrespectful way, but their head coach might say something and they'll question it immediately, or they might even see something and be like, oh, we should maybe do it this way. And I have no like anger management problem or anything, or like I don't get like I don't have any crazy issue, but it's like, I guess like a little pet peeve if there's like a little kid, like bossing me around, like, it just seems like I can never imagine like a guy like a 5-year-old telling me like, hey, like go do this. I'm sure it's how like a lot of parents feel. Like I'm sure it does get a little frustrating. Like you've seen so much, and there's this kid thinking like, some big shot and everything. Like how do you deal with that, where you say something and then players like, oh, like I don't think you're right and everything, when you're just so much more older than them?
Yeah, I mean, there's the thing with me that we always want to welcome open, honest conversation. And sometimes that means difficult conversations. But at the end of the day, like, you have to go about it the right way. Like I tell any guy that I coach or that I work with, like, hey, I want to have a dialogue. I don't know all the answers. Like I never have claimed to, and I never will. Like there's going to be questions that kids ask me that I have to say, hang on, let me make a call. I'll get back to you. Or maybe I don't know the answer. Let me figure it out. I'll let you know. But, I've been very fortunate not to have many of those situations. But like when it does happen, I think that you got one or two ways that you can handle it. And the way that I always choose, obviously you can lose your mind and go, hey, you got to respect me and blah, 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 and all that. And like, there's an element of that, right? You want respect, but also too, when you're in the arena the way that we are, emotions flare sometimes, and competitiveness gets the best of us, just as it does me. I think that's something that I have to approach, and that is like, I have been, albeit, I'm the leader and the coach or whatever, like I sometimes let my emotions get the best of me and say things that maybe I shouldn't, or question things maybe I shouldn't, whether it's with a coach or a player or even with myself sometimes. So I try to be very cognitive of like, hey, these players are, especially if it's a guy that it really works hard. Like, yeah, he may slip up and, man, I don't know what you want me to do, throw his hands up or something. And like, there's a way that we go about handling that. And obviously we got to set a precedent for that's not acceptable. But also I want to figure out what that dialogue was that he's confused on, because there must be a reason that he's frustrated. And that reason probably could have something to do with maybe the way I communicated or didn't communicate something. So I try to like breathe first and make sure that I'm not in the wrong, that I didn't leave something out. We had an instance this morning at practice. We're going through a drill, which is new here, as it's only day 2 with these guys with me. And we weren't doing something, and I got a little frustrated about it during the drill and kind of started chirping. And then I was like, wait a minute, I haven't told them that. And so I blow the whistle and I was like, yo, hey, that's my bad. Like, we got to do this, 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 and this. And then they're like, all right, cool. Cause they were getting frustrated at me for getting frustrated at them. And I felt really bad about that. But I mean, I'm sure we'll run across cases where, obviously people get frustrated or worked up or whatever, and they want to be a little disrespectful, and we'll handle those. I don't think we will. We have great kids, but if it does come across, like making sure that we're handling it with, as I tell people, every decision that I try to make has our program in mind. And so even if that's thinking about how I'm going to respond to a kid, it's got to be, what precedent are we setting that if this happens again, we handled it this way. And so, I'm sure there's some that it would drive crazy, and it does drive me crazy sometimes too, but still I'm called to teach and I'm called to lead. I'm not called to dismiss or called to, blow people off because they don't agree with the way I'm thinking. So, that's kind of the whole deal for me.
Yeah. And it could also kind of be seen maybe as like almost like a treat others the way you want to be treated kind of thing. Cause it's like, I feel like it is though very hard to, everyone says like, just take a step back, take deep breaths. Like that is very, very hard to do when you're like, heat of the moment and everything. But it's like, if a kid says something to me, like I would almost be like, almost like overly respectful to them. Cause then, next time they'll almost like feel bad. They'll be like, man, like I was trying to like show off a little bit and like, kind of one up him, but like, hey, like this is a nice guy. Like, I feel like it's almost like a good kind of way to kind of come at that as well.
No, it is. And it's exactly what I said earlier. Like you want guys to know that they're known and they're cared for. And so like, how am I letting a guy know I care for him if the first time that he tries to challenge me, I just lose my mind, kick him out of the gym, whatever, and granted, there may be repercussions for it, but at the end of the day, we're growing together, and he's got to know that like, hey, he or she has to know like, hey, I'm here for you now. You may not like what I tell you all the time. You may not agree with me all the time, but it's all for the betterment of you. And if you do disagree with it, like, let's come sit down. Like I tell my guys, I have an open door, open phone policy all the time. Like, let's talk about it. Let's get to the root of whatever the solution is. And, I'm a firm believer that communication like solves and creates like 98% of our problems. So if we can just communicate about it, we're probably going to figure it out. So yeah, it is something that, you want them to know. We've all had a substitute teacher in class before, right? As soon as the sub comes in, you want to see how far you can get. What can I get away with? Well, that's that's human, right? And so we're just somehow wired to kind of see what we can get away with. And kids do that with coaches, especially me being new. And I know that. And so I try to have that in the back of my mind as they're doing things, because I know they're trying to see what they can get away with. And that's, to be expected. And it helps me kind of set the standards of this is what we look like moving forward.
Yeah. And then I guess, you say moving forward to, I guess, your future, whatever that kind of may be. You said like really in the beginning of the interview, like how I was asking about you being young and everything. It's like, how are you going to kind of continue to, I guess, almost be the same thing, just stay consistent from such a long journey, when you start becoming like a legit adult and everything like that. So it's like, how, because I feel like I'm thinking to myself, I was actually going to ask you this question because I was like, the answer just keep doing it. But that is like a very hard thing to do, to just keep, being the same, or I guess not like, of course you're going to learn, but like keep that same high level personality and like,
sure.
And handle kids and everything like that. So how are you going to be able to just continue on and do everything for such a long period of time?
Well, the easiest answer for that for me is it's just me. That's just who I am. That's something that I have known ever since, walking in the door here at Albertville from day one. I've been nothing but myself. And I'm incredibly confident in that, and knowing that that's just how I'm wired. It's the things I enjoy. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to lose that. And in a sense, I just recently have really not discovered it, but acknowledged it and let it be, this is my truth. This is who I am. And this is how I'm always going to be. And you're going to get this version of me every single day. Now that's hard to do. There's going to be those days in, January when we're on a grind of playing like a 4-game league schedule back to back to back. And maybe, we haven't had success or something. And yeah, there's more frustration, or there's more, I've told, we had orientation today, all these people like, man, we love what you got going on and the energy. And I said, yeah, but we hadn't lost a game yet. Like, that all that changes once you put in, once that L column changes to a 0. But, at the end of the day, like, I'm going to authentically be myself every single day. And because, as you said, the hardest part is not building. The hardest part is sustaining. And that's personally, relationships, and your program, in whatever. So, doing whatever we can to make sure that what we're doing is sustainable, and we're doing what it takes to keep it moving forward and progressing as we go. And I'm sure there's a bunch of challenges ahead in that I'm not even sure what they'll be or quite how we'll handle them yet. But I do know that as a staff and myself and as our players, we'll sit down and really think it out and make sure that whatever we decide to do, however we try to handle it, hopefully has everyone, as many people as we can, best interest in mind, and certainly has our basketball program's best interest in mind.
For sure. And now just like a final question, kind of to wrap the whole thing up. Again, like for yourself personally, like do you have it all, like any goal or like someplace you're trying to be, with all this, or is it more like you're just kind of treating this, where you are right now is just going to be in the moment, and let's say you get a call up to go to the NBA, like great, but if not, like kind of what's your philosophy with that?
No, I mean, well, I think I could answer this one of two ways. I could give you the I'm happy, but I want to give a sincere answer. For me, I am at a place right now that I've always dreamed of. I didn't necessarily always dream of being Albertville, Alabama, but I've always aspired to be at a place where the community drove the program, where the administration supported, where the players were bought into what we were doing, where there was a great culture, great academics, the whole deal, the whole laundry list. And Albertville has everything that I've always wanted. Like as my brother, I have a younger brother who's 4 years younger than me, who's going to be on staff with me here. And he and I were driving around town one of the first days after I was hired. And he looked at me, he's like, man, you were meant to be here. Like this fits you. And he knows my story better than anyone and what I want and don't want. And he just looked around and was like, man, this place was made for you. And I feel that as I'm around our town and our city and our people, like there's just such a level of comfort. Now, obviously, like I'm always going to have an aspiration to do this at the highest level. Like if the Bucks call tomorrow, like I might take the phone call, and at least hear what they have to say. But at the end of the day, like, man, we had a parent meeting last night, and I told our families this very intentionally. There's no one in the country who's more proud to be where they are doing what they're doing than I am. Like with this entire setup here, everything about it is everything I've always wanted. And like, I think there's something to that there's going to be some real staying power here, a chance to dig roots and plant roots in a community and just be a part of it, become an Aggie and rock and roll with it. But as far as like an aspiration, man, like, sure, you turn on the TV and think it'd be awesome to be the guy coaching on the sideline of the NCAA tournament. Man, it'd be awesome to coach in the NBA, but that's just because I'm a junkie for the game. I try not to set it as like, oh, I want to be an NBA head coach one day. Like if that happens, great. I'm sure it'll be a tremendous opportunity, and I hope that I would have deserved it. But, for now, like, I guess the cliche part of it is like, just be where your feet are, man, and plant your feet down and get to work. And that's what I'm excited to do now.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that whole saying, be with your feet are, I forgot which NBA player it was, but I actually have listened to like a few episodes of the Long Shot podcast, which is like Johnson's podcast. And I know one of the people said that exact saying. So yeah, definitely all great advice for sure. But before we get this interview, is there anything that you want to plug or like anybody you want to shout out?
No, man, not necessarily. Other than people we've talked about, I think our Pro One basketball club has been a life-changing thing for me. It's helped me develop relationships that I never would have even dreamed of. Danny Cervic, I know I mentioned him earlier, is just the best. I mean, and I can't say that enough or lament it enough, or couldn't make it even make sense on air how much he's meant to me. And Derek Johnson, all the guys that I've mentioned, pretty much if your name was in here, it was very intentionally placed. And then more importantly, the last thing, and it's just every guy that I've coached, man, whether that be fourth graders or whether that be, college players, have all kind of helped mold me. You always think like, the student learns from the pupil, or the student learns from the teacher. Well, it's probably been more so the other way around. Like, I'm not the head coach at Albertville if it's not for a bunch of fourth graders that I coached at Lexington, Alabama in 2010, and so like I can, there's thousands of those guys and whatever, but that I've had the fortune enough to come across, but those would be the main guys to shout out, is those that have trusted me enough to play for me and to buy into what we're selling. It's given me the opportunity to be here. So those are the main men, then Pro One, and then the Aggies, man, the Albertville. I hope, people listen to this will look up Albertville, follow us on our socials, Albertville Aggies, and tag along, because we're going to try to create a pretty fun ride.
Yeah, definitely. Well, anyways, really, really appreciate you for your time. And, coming on, sharing knowledge and everything. It definitely means a lot to me, and maybe any other kind of young people that ever end up watching this thing. But before the interview,
and I do have one more thing since you're giving me the stage, and I'll be really brief. I think something and that's very important to all, and I hope is we're in the time that we are, is our mental health, right? Like if there's people out there that are struggling with things, like I'm sure that my profiles and stuff will be linked in this interview, whatever, like reach out and let's talk. Like, man, we're in such a time where communication is so important, and letting people know your truths, whether that's good, bad, or ugly. Like, I wanted to make a point to speak on that. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do that. That, like, man, and as listening to this, be there for others. Like, you never know how asking somebody how they're doing, how impactful that could be. So like, if there's anybody listening to this, I'd love to connect with, whether on that aspect or just talking hoops. So that's my last thing. I'm done. I'll quit rambling now.
Yeah, I might have to make that, like, because usually I don't know, and no one's ever told me I've watched your full interviews, and especially like this is definitely a more lengthy one. So I don't know anyone that has, but I might make this like my 1 minute clip that I put, because that was probably the best plug, like, out of anybody that I've asked that. Because I mean, mental health, like, that is something very, like, we saw even with Naomi, like, Osaka, or however you say her name, like, with all her stuff, like, it is, and it happens to everybody. And like, I definitely understand. I mean, it's crazy. It's like some people that have just been like, oh, hi, Isaac, and just them saying hi, like, that has like made my day sometimes. Like, it is crazy how much like facts that is and everything. But yeah, I'll definitely I'm very glad you said that for sure. But yeah, so make sure you guys give us a follow on Instagram at DP Bunnell. That's how you say your last name, right?
I go by Bunnell is the correct.
No, my bad.
I've heard it all. You're good. That's
I mean, I've definitely heard, like, my name's not, I don't think my name is complicated. I'm sure you don't think your name's complicated, but I've definitely had a lot of butchering of my name as well. Wait, how do you, so I'll make sure one more time. How do you say it?
It's Bunnell.
Bunnell. All right. Yeah. So it's kind of like different kind of emphasis. All right. So it's DP Bunnell _ and I'm at iHoops FL. And anyways, for the head coach at Albertville High School, Dylan Bunnell, I'm Isaac Fleischer. This has been another iHoops FL interview. Peace out, guys.
Thanks.